Hey folks, it's Lindsey Huddleston back at it again with the SPSEdge show. That is right, Lindsey Huddleston with SPS with my able-bodied co-host, Mr. Terry McCord Jr., co-host and SPS intern that is, doing a great job setting the bar very high. We also have Coach Orlando Watkins, always representing. We consider ourselves Nassau and he's Houston. He's our base. He keeps us connected, but also gets us out there into the world. Terry, we got a lot of things to talk about today, from LeBron and the Lakers, Trump and Ice Cube, to Nick Saban and COVID. Who would have thought that we would be saying those names together? I thought about that. If we would have went back several years ago, for me to say, hey, man, LeBron going to the Lakers, people were like, what? What are you talking about? And then mentioning Trump and Ice Cube in the same sentences, you like, I don't get that. And this thing called COVID, with one of the greatest football coaches ever, Nick Saban, and what that means. So we'll make sure to get into all that. So with that, man, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's been a great weekend. As I'm going into the end of my week, I got through some tough exams. The Browns are 4-1, so that's good, with sports. I was cheering for the Lakers, so they ended up winning in 6 games. So everything's been good. I've been able to maintain and build into my routine daily, whether it's working out, study time, social time. Everything's been going well for me.
Yeah, people have to take into account, you and I have a, great opportunity to come here and share a message on a platform that's very positive. Shout out to the Streets of Talking Podcast Network. It was so cool, Terry. This past weekend, I was traveling, and it was around that 1 p.m. time, Eastern Standard. So I pulled up the website, and Terry and Lindsey getting at it on the SPSEdge. So shout out to my guy, Don Carman Houston with Streets of Talking, and also my guy, Clarence Sumo Babor. So yeah, man, it's a lot to talk about. So the Lakers have won a championship. I guess this platform finally allows me to share my real thoughts about LeBron. Man, it gets to be so controversial talking about LeBron compared to Jordan or Kobe. It's like Bloods and Crips, Democrats and Republicans, man. They're like, man, who you with? And it's like, whoa. And shout out to Derek Gilliam, a guy, one of my social media buddies, included me in a post, and some other guys did, asking who's the great and what. And to be honest, man, I just really enjoy watching the debate. I think it's hard because Nick Wright, from the Talking Heads said, tell me how Jordan's the greatest without saying 6 rings. But, and again, the 6 rings is significant. But when you talk about the eras and you talk about the different players and all these different, things, and as a real Detroit bad boy, talking about how the Pistons changed the game and brought that physicality, that same thing you see when LeBron's playing bully ball. I'm like, he should be playing bully ball to get that chip. And the fact that he can bully ball, no one can do anything about it. But, I'm a LeBron fan, always have been, always will be. When he was at Cleveland, went to Miami, when he went to the Lakers, obviously. And I would say that my rationale, not that anyone has to rationale why they're a fan of someone, but my rationale about liking LeBron, man, is his game, but he just seemed to be so much more than basketball in our eyes. And I know that growing up in the Michael Jordan era, Michael definitely was, a mythical creature, no doubt. But I think with social media, I think, Terry, with, just my age and how I'm moving around and hearing an athlete that is speaking to issues when you had a generation of athletes who didn't, it just resonates more with me. And I don't like to get into any heated debates with people about it. I mean, I like LeBron. I like Jordan too. I mean, give me a break. I don't think it has to be an either or, but I think that's the nature of sports. And I'll get your thoughts on this. The nature of sports is what? Finality. We got to get a winner. Overtime, double overtime, triple overtime, somebody got to win. Tie, I don't know. So it's almost like, I'll throw this to you like this, Terry. Can we do it like in football and say there's a tie, or people don't want to accept that?
I think it depends on who you're asking. I think for me, I think the two are completely different players. I see Jordan as more of an elite scorer with a defensive background. LeBron, to me, is like an all-around playmaker. Like, we're not going to see another. Like, we saw one before. Well, I didn't see one. Magic Johnson, a 6'8" playmaking guard. And then we thought we wouldn't see that again. But then here comes, LeBron James, a 6'8" point guard who can score the ball at will, rebound, get his teammates involved. Like, we're not gonna ever see that again. I mean, we're talking about. I think a lot of times LeBron gets into debate a lot because he makes it clear, like, I'm chasing that man in Chicago. I'm chasing Jordan. And a lot of times people give him slack. Oh, he's not gonna get there. But I mean, like, LeBron has said, I wear 23 because of Mike. Like, I'm always gonna be striving to catch Mike, and I'm gonna do whatever I can to be able to be on that level. And a lot of people don't want to see that. A lot of people think that Michael is the best ever and no one is ever gonna pass him. But I think LeBron has passed him. That's like my opinion. But I really think so. And I think it's really cool to see someone still not being finished yet, but as well on the verge of getting with his accomplishments, especially with finals.
Yeah. You just gave me a great thought, Terry, that I can keep in my LeBron versus Jordan debate. If we were to fast forward into the future, a future where individuals like myself, yourself, and Coach Watkins, who weren't able to see Jordan, weren't able to experience that, didn't have a sense of the influence of what it was like watching him play. And if we fast forward to a time where our voices aren't involved and people can only look at stats, look at, numbers and things like that, I really think, and this is not, a knock on Michael Jordan, but I think people are going to lean more towards LeBron because you listen to the commentators during the finals, and it seems like every game they're telling you about a new stat that he is the leader in, top 5 in the NBA ever in. And it's like, dude, when it comes down to the finals, I get it, rings, don't get me wrong. But when you talk about the finals being its own fraternity within itself, LeBron James has been the king of the finals. There's a cool little meme going around. I have to send it to you and Coach Watkins when I see it. And it's set up like this. It's really basic. It's like, how do you determine what? They said, will your team be in the finals is the question. And it starts off by saying, is LeBron James in your conference? Is he not in your conference? Then it started breaking down. It was like, okay, if LeBron James in your conference, is he on your team? And then if your answer is yes, he's on my team, then it says yes, you will be in the finals. But then it says if LeBron James in your conference and he's not on your team, then no, you're not going to be. It just breaks it down. It's like, dude, if he's on your team, you're going to the finals. And people go like, okay, finals, but I'm talking about a championship. But I just think, man, the greatest part about this, and I defer back to you, man, the greatest part about the debate between Michael Jordan and LeBron James is that finally there's something where you got to be like, it's just not clear cut. And I was a 6 rings guy for a long time. For several years. I was like, man, they got the rings. I don't want to hear it. But, man, I just started looking at how he's been dominating so many other categories, dude. And like I said, he goes to the bubble, which every NBA player has said has been one of the hardest experiences to do. Wins a championship as he was expected to. And it looked like he got about 2 more in him. You know what I'm saying?
So.
Yeah. That Laker team, woo! What'd you think?
Mm-hmm. I think this obviously the bubble was a different experience, but I think this finals itself, Heat versus Lakers, was very unique. I think we saw 2 different storylines. I mean, with this being mental toughness, Jimmy Butler was kind of. I was catching myself kind of cheering for him, rooting for him a little bit. Because, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's been shipped out by the Timberwolves, because of problems in the locker room, shipped out by the 76ers because he wasn't a good fit, finds his way in Miami, and people are like, oh, this is the last chance. This is Jimmy's last ride, and takes him to the finals his first year. I mean, Jimmy, I think game 3, the mental toughness of Jimmy Butler was unreal. I mean, we're talking about, sweep. You hear all this talk about getting swept. This man dropped a 40-point triple-double and played 45 minutes. I mean, just getting everybody involved, brought the series back up to life. I mean, I hear friends and, people around me saying, oh, it's not even worth watching. He brought the views back. And it was cool to watch somebody who, under all the scrutiny of not being a good teammate, you can just see Miami, their whole team, with Hero being the youngest starter ever. I think he beat Magic by like 14 days, seeing his game elevate. But a lot of that was due to the toughness of Butler. And I think Coach Spoelstra had his little hands in there too, bringing Jimmy Butler and giving that mindset of like, look, you're the best player on this court. And we can see that. There were games where Jimmy was that best player on the court, game 3, and also he looked like it in game 5, but LeBron had 40. So, I mean, I don't think he was that game, but definitely was good enough to win. So I think just the whole having LeBron chasing his 4th ring with AD and having that little tandem doing their thing for the Lakers show, but also the Heat coming out of nowhere. I mean, they beat the Bucks in 5 games. They swept the Pacers, and then they beat the Celtics in 6. I mean, they were on an unbelievable run. And when that doubt started to creep up, Jimmy was like, "No, we're here to play." I mean, I didn't think they'd win, but Jimmy Butler definitely caught my eye with his toughness, and it was unreal just to see it.
No, it was great watching, and shout out to Jimmy Butler, man. I mean, what I dislike, and I may have said this before, what I dislike about, this NBA season, man, is as much as I'm an LA Lakers fan and wanted LeBron to win, there were so many other teams I wanted to root for. I wanted to root for Jimmy Butler. I liked their story and what was going on. There was several storylines, and I would also say, oh boy, if the Heat could have beat LeBron and the Lakers, they was going to have something to say, and that probably would have been more of a braggadocious experience than if the Celtics would have went and beat them.
I think so too.
Jimmy Butler did an amazing job. He got a chance to kind of, clear his name because Jimmy Butler was kind of getting that Terrell Owen like, notoriety as is he possibly a locker room cancer? What's his problem? What's his deal? Especially when you have, the quote unquote audacity of a player to say they want to leave. I don't want to be here. Let me go. And then to find his way. And quiet as kept, there was a tweet that went out that said he really said he wanted to come to Miami to chill on the beach. So it was like he got there, but he got there with, Rouse, and Eric Spoelstra, I think, also got his credit because I think at this point, had Miami not gone to the finals and did what they did, only winning 2 games, it solidified Eric Spoelstra as being one of the best coaches in the NBA because look what he had to do and look what he had to work with. I think that when the Lakers didn't win that game 3, if I'm saying it correctly, no, excuse me, it was a game 5. When they didn't win game 5, I think what we saw was Miami kind of hitting their limit, but we didn't see it. We should have known when Jimmy Butler went over and bent over. When he went over and bent over right before the end of the game, he was giving up the ghost right then. But had there probably been an overtime or maybe even a double overtime, I think we would have got some of what we saw in the Laker domination. Now, the cool thing about Game 6 was that, dude, if you didn't know, now you know. When the Lakers came out and they was like in a halftime, the whole ESPN staff was like, it's a wrap. And that's rare. When you got the whole table saying it's done, it's over. You're not coming back from 30-some-odd points, the second largest deficit in finals history. And it was almost like that didn't make the haters any happier with LeBron because it was kind of like, man, he turned around and crushed this cat to make it known. Now, I will admit personally, had somehow the Heat won Game 6, I would have been concerned. And I would have been concerned from the standpoint that it would have seemed like it would have been such a traumatic experience, especially when you consider LeBron was one of the only people to come back from being down 3-1. Then now he would have been in the situation where the same thing could have happened. And you wonder what kind of mental impact it would have had. And last thing I'll say, when you look at the end of Game 5, the Lakers didn't have it. They weren't there. They weren't championship ready. You can tell that they were close, but with the mental mistakes they made down the end, the fact that they weren't locked in, and my God, just to see that, and then to see the start of Game 6, man, and how they came out and did that, I loved it. Some people talk about they don't like blowouts. I'm cool with it. If it's my team winning, they can blow out all they want. And lastly, as the buzzer sound, who got their shirt off? My guy J.R. Smith was like, yeah, that's what I'm here for. I'm a human highlight reel. So no, Terry, that's been something watching that. And I think it's also been something, and it's great that we have our own platform that we can talk about this. And it's kind of going to be a segue for something I'll talk about, a little later. But when you talk about LeBron James winning his 4th NBA championship with the Los Angeles Lakers in the bubble, but also let's talk about the racial undertones, the social injustice campaign, and talk about the fact that it almost didn't happen, one, to begin with, without the work of Chris Paul and many others, and Carmelo Anthony and those guys who, by the way, Carmelo said he plans to be back, particularly in Portland, and I think that'd be great for everything. But also, too, man, about that walkout that almost happened. Basically when Brother Blakely was shot in the back like that, and but here's the thing I'm getting at, Terry. It's not a discussion right now. Breonna Taylor did not get the justice that many believe that she deserved. We're finding out that Daniel Cameron was suppressing information and not sharing everything. It was never, a wholehearted effort to bring justice, but only to, keep one particular group of individuals contained, empowered, and supported. But it's like that's all done now, and it's almost like there's no discussion of it. But I guess at the end of the day, you can say, I can say hats off to you, LeBron, for what you did. But also, I guess I learned this lesson too. Maybe the work continues with his More Than a Vote campaign. Maybe the work is going to continue with, 20 some odd days leading up to the election, him and many others being very, very vocal about the importance of voting. I got a very, very close friend who, unfortunately, with some decisions that were made, is a felon. But based on change in the law, he
Right.
was able to vote for the first time, and he voted today. And I'm talking about proud. I think the only time I've seen this guy to be more proud than what he was when his children were born. So I think that everything that happened in the bubble, man, LeBron and Lakers come out on top. LeBron to clearly establish himself as a man with backbone and being principled about what's important to his community, and to see how that may influence this 2020 election, which is, as it seems, every election seems to be the most contested election. But one thing I will say about this election, to start a soft transition, if you will, is that I was talking to a really good friend of mine, a former lobbyist. Well, I'm a former lobbyist. He's currently a lobbyist, and we were talking, Terry, and I think the one thing I came down to is my biggest concern about this election is the concern for mass loss of life. And any other year, any other time, I don't think that would be a concern. But what we've been able to see and where we see the country is at, and with plots to, kidnap the governor, and law enforcement seem like they're complicit, it's just like that's more of my concern. But as I said on the SPS Monday Motivation, don't be scared, be prepared. I think it says a lot, but I think the bubble turned out well. I think the bubble was a great example of what we can do. You're going to see NCAA following that. Tom Izzo was talking about
Right.
that in length, about how he's just going to be like, hey, we're going to do it like the bubble. He's even excited about the potential of being casual, not having to wear a shirt and tie. He spoke to that. So as we try to wrap this up and give LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers their due, what's your thoughts on that as we get ready to transition to one of our other topics?
I think towards the end, I stayed up and I watched the SVP show, the Scott Van Pelt, his Sports Center show at the end of the game.
Definitely a politically motivated sports
Oh
show.
yeah,
Yeah, and I'm not
oh
mad.
yeah. And his show, the one thing I like about his show, we get to see the players' side of things and how they feel. And I feel like a lot of times the media doesn't always do it justice, but I love how genuine they keep it. And for the first time, I don't know about the first time, but it felt hearing LeBron speak at the end really made me think that he's human. I mean, I'm thinking LeBron is some kind of like machine, robot, laser eyed focus, But he even said at the end that one thing I love that he said is that, he talked about his doubts. I mean, yeah, there's sometimes I do doubt if I can do this, or like all this, strain I'm putting on my body, and he was really like emphasizing that he does doubt, he's human. Human people, like everyone's gonna doubt themselves at some point in time. But then he always talks about his backbone, his work ethic. He always talks about, man, I know I work out, I put all this money and time in my body.
$2 million a year he invests in his body.
Right. And like it's like, man, it's like knowing that and knowing that I'm doubting this right now, like he's almost like, are you serious? Like, I put all this time in, I can do this, and just to hear LeBron even um validate himself of his hard work is like it's cool to see that, because it's like someone like myself is in this moment now where I'm grinding and I'm going through things with school and working with you, and I'm going through, a lot of these different struggles that may come up. It's okay to validate your hard work, or like, reassure yourself like, hey, I got this, you know what I'm saying? And seeing someone do that at the high level was it was cool to see, and I thought it was really powerful for someone like myself and for others who are looking for something to, to keep themselves going. And I think Jimmy Butler at the end, I feel like, he was hurt, but I think that's a sense of, I feel like he couldn't be more proud of himself from what he's came from, being shipped out and everyone doubted him and mentioning the meme about him just wanting to go on the beach and relax. And it's like, I mean, this almost gives him more fuel and fire the next season. And with the young guys they got there and looking to possibly get Giannis or some other big time stars to come down there with them, the sky's the limit for the Heat. I mean, their youth down there is really they can ball. I mean, they're young. Hero being a rookie and Duncan stepping up and hitting shots and Bam Adebayo's looking like a playmaking center. I
Be a
mean,
healthy
who would have
Goran
thought?
Dragic when the season
Yeah,
comes back
with
up too.
Dragic coming back, and another thing I want to touch on with Kendrick Nunn. I mean, with his mental toughness, going from starting from 67 games to just
Was it
coming off the
second in
bench
the
and
rookie of the year voting?
I think it was honestly I'm not really sure about that, but I know he was up there, and I know talks were about him were big. They were huge about him, and him starting 67 games and getting into kind of a slump. He was a main force of them being able to keep up the momentum in game 3 and in game 5, hitting shots and keeping them competitive. So shout out to him for really keeping that mindset of going back to his game, hitting shots and playmaking and getting people involved.
He was so good, Terry. He made me not like him because he was like, this guy hitting buckets, so that's good. I want to go back to something you said, Terry, and I appreciate your insight. You make an excellent point, especially as it relates to what the core of the SPS Edge show is about, dealing with mental toughness in sports and life. So here you are saying, wow, did you notice how LeBron James, the man who quote unquote has everything, was able to still talk about his own form of self-doubt? And I think that's important to note because you and I out here on the grind, and we got our love from our family and friends, but we don't have the international, global recognition of a LeBron James. And even with all those things, people waiting on him hand and foot, and him having everything he wants. A beautiful wife, man. I say I've seen Savannah in person. She's a beautiful young lady. I say all that to say he still has self-doubt. And I think it's important because the humanization of LeBron James is very important. I think for so long, when he's had so much success, whether it's the bully ball, which I kind of prefer based on me being on the court, to him winning like that and having all these things, the I Promise School, for him to be able to say, man, that's it. And then if you notice, one of the first things he did when he won his 4th NBA championship was FaceTime his mother. And I think that's an experience we all can relate to. I know you and your relationship with your mom, just as with your dad, is tight. Me and my relationship with my mom, that's my ace. That could be us. So I think what draws many of us to LeBron is the humanization, but also that connection. But also, I'm wondering if what makes people dislike LeBron is those moments of him being vulnerable. Those moments of him, speaking his mind and saying how he feels, whether there's people outside of his politics or within. So I want to use that as a transition, Terry, being mindful of time. I think we did a really good job in giving the Lakers and LeBron their due, talking about the discussions. And I think when we look back on it in history, we'll enjoy what we just talked about based on how we put it out there. But now, man, keeping it all the way West Coast, want to give a shout out to the OG, the homie Ice Cube, O'Shea Jackson Sr., who's making big time headlines because for a while, for several months, he had been talking about the CWBA, the contract with Black America. He was talking about this thing where, hey, before we just give our vote to Joe Biden, let's talk about what these people are going to do for us. And I think it's very important that you look at where Ice Cube at in this walk. And I'm saying this as a supporter of Ice Cube. I'm feeling him. But, man, let me tell you something. Ice Cube is I don't know what it would be the way to relate this to you or what example, but Ice Cube is like that coach, Terry, making you run so many suicides that you think you're about to throw up. Meaning he's pushing us to the brink. But we do know that if I'm running these suicides to the point where I'm about to throw up, I know in the greater scheme, this is making me what? Better.
I already know a coach, Coach Jones. I mean,
yeah.
that was I don't remember tryouts. I don't mean to cut you off real quick, but
no, you tryouts,
man, we didn't scrimmage or anything. I remember my sophomore year of tryouts, man. I'm like pumped up. I had Skylar with me and Deontay Willard. We were like, man, we about to come out here. Man, we was like, we about to come out here, ball, scrimmage, and all this and that. We come in here, we don't even scrimmage. We don't touch a basketball until the very end. I'm talking about 5 minutes left. I'm talking about suicides, defensive slides, all that, man. I'm talking about like jumping wall sits, jumping over the line for footwork. I mean, anything. But we knew it was gonna be better. But man, the first day, the whole week was like that. It was unreal. But I would say Coach Jones for sure. That was
So
like a
you
quick
know that. So
connection.
we got a great example. And now I'm going to put my political hat back on. And I consider myself a political expert as it relates to watching things. I give credit to Coach Orlando Watkins, who's definitely keyed into the politics of not only Detroit, but throughout. But here's the thing, man. Now people can argue and say we need to talk about canceling Ice Cube. I'm going to pull up a tweet that he just sent out that I shared with you about CNN. He said he felt CNN canceled him, and it was
Yeah.
Ice Cube said CNN canceled him. He said, so the powers that be canceled my interview on Cuomo Primetime tonight. I've actually been banned from CNN for a few months, so I was surprised they even asked. But it seemed like they can't handle the truth. So here's the big thing. And you want to get to the Ice Cube debate, whatever. Here's the thing for me that made me be like, whoa, it raised the eyebrow. He said, listen, I gave this to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the Dems, and I gave it to Trump. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris said, we'll talk to you after the election. Trump said, holler at me now. So let me take a step back and speak to you as an entrepreneur, as a father, as a black man in America. Now, the funny thing is that so many Democrats are telling Cube to shut up, man, stay out of this. But you got to look at what Ice Cube has done and what I was getting at earlier as far as where he's at in this stage in his life. He's gone from being, remember, Ice Cube was the one that wouldn't sign with NWA earlier because the paperwork wasn't right. All right, so early in his career, he's always showed a level of consciousness despite what was going around. So he didn't sign. He left NWA. And let's just say he's probably turned out to be probably one of the greatest members of NWA, short of Dr. Dre and what he's done in music. But as far as the level of consciousness, Ice Cube ain't steered us wrong yet. And secondly, check this out. What I didn't like is the way the Trump campaign ran with it. The young lady on the campaign, I think it might be Jared Kushner's girlfriend, but if not her, it's another Trump strategist. Oh, we want to thank Ice Cube for sitting down and giving us some insight. So they took it and they ran with it. But then she said something to the former effect of, thanks for your leadership and courage. And then she puts up the black fist and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, you know what? You don't have no history of doing that. But to get your feedback, my thing with this on Cube, Ice Cube that is, man, let me tell you something. I know the feeling, man, of feeling like nobody's listening to me. I know the feeling of saying, I really want to help. I know the feeling of saying, you know what, while you playing, we need some capital. See, Ice Cube and all he's done with the big three, which makes him very significant for this conversation as it relates to sports and mental toughness and helping those guys who are former NBA players get some gravitas back by them going and playing the big three. And then also him trying to do a nationwide campaign as it relates to the big three. And I know he's like, there's some financial inequities out here. And I read one, I looked at one of his podcasts when he talked about it. So what I'm saying is, members of the establishment, Democrat, Republican, but in this particular case, the Democrats will have issue with Ice Cube and would never really give him a seat at the table. Because if they're saying, oh, don't even bring that up, or Ice Cube doesn't speak for me, or then something like, also, talk to us after the election. I think all those things, in my view, put Ice Cube well within his rights to take the phone call from the Trump administration. Because the last thing is this, Terry. If the Dems told him to wait, and Trump never called, was he supposed to tell Trump to wait? And then when the Dems come around, let's say if the Democrats and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris do win, which I'm hoping they do, if they do win, what if they can ice him? No pun intended. They can be like, oh, well, we can't really, whatever, because they got what they wanted. So that's my thought on it. I'm not mad at Cube in that regard, but it's not going to be a popular decision. So what do you think?
I think Ice Cube, just reading, so there was a quote in a tweet he made, and he said, I will advise anybody on the planet who has the power to help Black Americans close the enormous wealth gap. Now, I don't think Ice Cube right here is really picking sides. I think he's really just trying to have just trying to put our view out there. And I think our view as African Americans, in a way, I don't really think that it's catered to any party. I know a lot of times people think that one side, the Democratic side, is more catered to the black voice, but a lot of times it's not. And I think uh, Ice Cube comes in as an independent. He's like, look, here's a plan that we need to listen to and talk about as we try to close this economic gap between white Americans and black Americans. But then I don't think it was a great look for Joe Biden and Senator Harris, because it's like, oh, we'll holler at you after, but let us worry about winning. I think that would be a great booster
Let me ask you a
for
question
them.
though, Terry. Like, why did they not take advantage and leverage Ice Cube? Why did they not do that?
Oh, I mean, you think it would be a no-brainer. I mean, it's like
For people
somebody who
who's
has
gonna
that
say,
power.
"Oh, he's a gangster rapper. Why are you, getting with him?" And like, speaking negatively of what could it have been. It's like that was an easy layup. Now, Kamala Harris was talking about on the Breakfast Club how she listened to Tupac, which people kind of
Right.
questioned. They was like, "Well, what year was you listening to Tupac and whatnot?" So what's that about, man? They want to vote, but you don't want to bring Ice Cube to the table. You don't want to embrace him. Now Trump is taking advantage of it.
And a lot of that is very sad. And I think hearing that kind of makes it think like, is their voice and their message catered to the black elites, or is it catered to everybody? Because I mean, Ice Cube is probably speaking like, hey, I'm from where I'm from. This is how they feel. And this is how we get everybody up, not just those that are already maybe benefiting from some capital. Let's get everybody up. Last time I checked,
Well, Ice Cube
you know what I'm saying?
he's lived through every economic spectrum. He's been poor,
Right,
he's been rich. So
right.
a better person. But I think that's the knock on the Democratic Party. But here's the thing, Terry. You're considered a bad person if you speak out of term and say that. Why are you saying that, man? Not supporting Joe is a vote for Trump. But the reality is that I'm seeing I'm kind of getting at him more and more. I get it, man. We just been conditioned for so long that in modern day history, the Democratic Party has been a party of African Americans. And I think what happened is when African Americans, Terry, attempted to be upwardly mobile and they looked for these opportunities, there seemed like the opportunities were there. But it's always been the case. Dems cannot win without black votes, man. Dems
Right.
cannot win. Republicans, maybe. Republicans got the John Calipari at Kentucky. I want you, but I don't need you attitude. He was like, Republicans like,
Right.
I want you, but we're going to keep it moving without you. That's why when we do things, we don't worry about including you, but we can add to that. But I think it's tough, man, that we're left with that. And I think also it's tough, Terry, with the exception of our platform, thank goodness, that African Americans don't have the confidence to be able to say, well, what about us? Because when you look
Right.
at it, man, it seems like we're left out. And if you really want to go there, man, I was watching this documentary on PBS about the mobility of African Americans. It goes back to slavery up until the present day. And it talked about if it wasn't for the automobile, man, blacks would be probably worse off than what they were because you couldn't get away and move around. But it also talked about this reality. The reality that in the United States of America, man, throughout the history of the United States has always collectively made laws that were to the
Right.
detriment of African Americans. This is not hearsay. This is not, I think I know what I'm talking about. You can look and it tells you the year that laws were passed. There was a law that said if one African American, Terry, one
Mm-hmm.
African American lived in your city or in your area, that area, the entire area was deemed undesirable and the property values were lower. You talk about systematic racism. You talk about the economic injustice in that. We know that home ownership is what drives America. Home
Oh yeah.
ownership is what brought, lower middle class people out of that. Home ownership is what catapulted generations of people to be successful. And here we are in 2020. Somebody look at you crazy because for some way or form, your family wasn't able to pass on the benefits of home ownership, equity, life insurance, all these things that compound together give you an opportunity to be successful in the American race, so be it. So here is our beloved Ice Cube, man, getting ostracized. Good old CNN won't hear him. It's bad that he got to go to Trump, but I guess the last thing I'll say when we talk about transition from LeBron James and him and that comment you made about him being able to go back and look at and say, you know what, I gotta be my own man. I'm a little vulnerable. Did I do the right thing? I wonder where Cube is right now And did he have some fluttering moments of saying, did I do the right thing?
Cube, a lot of people are kind of taking this the wrong way. I think people are taking it as that Ice Cube has donated money to Trump's administration or his campaign. Quoted by Cube, he hasn't endorsed anything. Like he hasn't given them a cent.
Let me just add. I want you to stay with this. A formal endorsement doesn't matter in these days of social media. The fact that the Trump campaign was able to put out a tweet and tag Ice Cube in it. I mean that's an endorsement. I mean it's not directly. That's an indirect endorsement because now Trump has the power of the talking point. Now Trump said, "I've done more for African Americans. Look, that's Ice Cube." And now there's a conversation. Some people might be pulling their hair out and saying, "No, Lindsay, what?" I said, "But no." And in this world of social media, that's all that really matters. He said, "No." He said, "Well, I asked Ice Cube because now he can shit on Ice Cube and not care because he can say it don't matter. Ice Cube came and talked to me. He gets it, And I stopped you from talking, but I just had to add that part."
Oh yeah, and I think that's what makes it so tough hearing that because, like you said, how she kind of took it and ran with it and started doing like kind of mimicking us doing
how do you get the right to throw up a black fist?
Terrible.
How do you get the right? You ain't even black, but then you throw up a black fist, and it's like, is that how you've been getting? Here's what gets me, Terry. Have you been rolling like this already? That's why I look at Trump and I laugh. Like, have you already been rolling like this? Has this been your thing? But it can be so exhausting because we can lose sight of it. But I guess people who say they want to go with Trump, the problem I have is that they seem to be accepting the current plight of Black people in America. And I know economics are important, and that's what, Ice Cube is talking about. But it's also a concern that if there's not a almost social, emotional connection that the government is recognizing and providing, that's a problem. Some people say they don't care about that, just give me the money. But man, it makes it hard. But I guess in the next few weeks, we'll know what decision was the right decision. I commend Ice Cube for having the balls to say, you know what, they reached out to me.
Oh, yeah.
President, he reached out to me, asked for this. And again, here's the key for me. Biden and Harris said, we holler at you later. Now you got a Black woman running who knows she's more familiar with Ice Cube than Joe Biden is. So clearly Kamala Harris didn't think it was of importance to stand next to Ice Cube. And she definitely didn't go in there and say, let's hear what Ice Cube has to say. Let's include him in what we need. And clearly there must be some kind of confidence, which worries me.
Right.
Because that's the same kind of approach Hillary Clinton took. And she had the boo-boo face on election night when she couldn't believe that Trump won, when she didn't come back to Michigan. She didn't do these things. So here it is, the Biden and Kamala don't want to holler at Cube. So I'll stop with that, Terry. I got at my feel with that, and I guess it remains to be unknown. But again, your thoughts?
I think, like you said, I think the cockiness showed in a way, because this is definitely like a stepping stone that kind of I thought would put them over the top. Just being able to hear the Black voices and their opinion to close that wealth gap. But it's disappointing because now we got Trump, who is an opportunist in my eyes, and took that and ran with it.
Oh yeah.
And it's sad to see that and missed their opportunity. I wouldn't even say that as an opportunity. I think it's just the right thing to do. I mean, just to hear those hear the plan and see how they can compromise and make it work. Because I mean, we see it, and their whole message about systematic racism, I think this is a way to kind of back that for me. And I just fail to see why they miss it.
Ice Cube was too real for him. And clearly whoever's in Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's ear, spoke against it. Because to tell anybody, I'll speak with you after the election is basically an F you.
Yeah.
Like, straight on you. Like, I'm good. Like, holler at me later. Because ain't nobody want to talk to you after that. Because after election, ain't nobody gonna better get with you. And if you got elected, you already got your mandate, or we got elected without you, so we don't need you. So basically, this is what happens when you neglect issues like this. It ends up getting into the hands of people who were co-opted for their own. But what was Ice Cube to do? He was supposed to say, well, they told me to wait. And he's probably feeling he got the whole Black community riding on this to make this happen. So with that, we'll come back to that. We'll keep an eye on what's happening with Ice Cube and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and, of course, Donald Trump. And I think that'd be interesting. But something that's going to be very noticeable and might be historic on top of being historic is the fact that in the last few minutes, we can touch on this, that Alabama's Nick Saban has unfortunately contracted the COVID virus. And probably more unfortunate than that, the NCAA rules state, Terry, that you can't coach remotely, meaning that up until 90 minutes before kickoff, the Alabama head coach, Nick Saban, cannot be in the building in Tuscaloosa. He can't be in contact with the team via anything digital. He can't Zoom the team. He can't call. The NCAA say, no bet. COVID has him out. So in this particular case, Nick Saban is not there. So some argue this could be the first time a Nick Saban assistant, shout out to, all his assistants that are out there, including Mel Tucker here at Michigan State University. But this is the first time that Georgia's coach and Nick Saban's assistant can potentially beat Nick Saban. He's currently 20-0 right now. What do you think is going to happen when Georgia and Alabama face off?
I think I'm glad you point out the rule. And I think I've heard rumors that a lot of those rules have to do with physically calling them. And I think,
you know what? I think Terry, I'm pretty sure what he did. I know he's going to be back in a second. We're going to get him. I think he touched his AirPod. I think he touched it and that cut him off. So he's getting connected with us again. He's going to turn. And Terry, what I was thinking is, I think what happened is you touched your earpiece and it cut off. We got to get you. You're still on mute. We got to get you to unmute.
All right, there we go. That's my apologies.
You touched your earpiece and it cut off?
Yeah, I don't know why it does. It's weird, but
they're real.
That's my bad. Lost connection. My bad.
If you were sweet, you came back, but please go back. You were saying you were talking about the rule and whatnot.
I've heard that they can actually text them. That's like a way, like a little loophole in the rule. And
text.
It's crazy to think that
have a graduate assistant sitting with a tablet that Nick Saban is texting in.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, man. I mean, come on, cuz you might just have to sit back at the crib and just sit back and grab you a drink or grab you a cigar, do whatever you do, and just let that ride, man. I mean, what? But he's still gonna be trying to get his coaching in there, huh?
I guess, but I don't think he'll do it. I think he'll follow the rules, but I think this just goes to say the SEC fan protocol. I did some reading about it, and I'm very disappointed in their rules. I think this is more of a, hey, we put this out here, but you guys can follow it if you wish. And I mean, we're talking about things where we're talking about the word recommendations. I mean, here's something that I picked out. It's like baseline recommendations for the campus management of fan health and safety. Why is the word recommendation on there? You know what I'm saying? Why is
these words
like
what am I putting up on the screen? What am I putting up? What hand symbol am I showing you on the screen?
That money, that green.
That money.
Yeah.
We want to recommend it. We want to cover ourselves, but we want to recommend in case there's a potential that this can stop us from our money, man. The SEC is about that bread, just like college football is. But please go on.
But another thing is about the mask, face covering. A rule is that face covering shall be required as a condition of all guests. Even moving anywhere part of the vicinity of the stadium, masks must be worn. I don't know about you, but I've seen games at Sanford Stadium of Georgia, games in Tuscaloosa. I don't see fans wearing masks sometimes. I've seen a lot more than I thought. That's good to see that they are complying with the rules, but I'm seeing a lot more fans that are not following these rules. I mean, we're talking about at Kyle Field of Texas A&M. There's a lot of fans in there.
They were going no mask. They were connected with each other and going back and forth.
And the thing is, though, the CDC about social distancing, they said it should be applied. Should.
Oh, yeah. Well, the CDC has really been putting things out there for people to look at and do. But unfortunately, people do their own thing. I want to say Florida's coach was pushing for full capacity in their stadium, saying that he felt that it was unfair advantage that the home team they had. I think when they played Texas, uh,
Yep.
uh,
Texas A&M. Yep.
yep, A&T, excuse me, A&M, when they played them, they felt that was an unfair advantage with that. But here's the sad part, Terry. As we listen to this and watch all this, and me being someone who's happy to get back in sports, just really quickly, I remember was Tom Izzo was just talking yesterday in his first press conference back that he knows that the media has really had a tough job, but they haven't been able to cover sports. I'm excited about sports. I'm going to be in Belleville, Michigan tomorrow to watch the Belleville Tigers take on
It's a
Franklin.
good team.
They've been on a amazing tear, man. 69-0 has been like their score the
Whew.
last 3 to 4 games, you know. So anyway, I want to go down there and check out them. But my point being is, man, we were away for it so long and so happy to get back. But these rising cases throughout the country, each day we're breaking a new record. It's showing that we're trending in the wrong direction. We are not trending in the direction of this virus getting under control. And then you got terms like herd immunity. And from my limited knowledge about this, but I think we all know enough, they're saying herd immunity like that conversation can't even come into play unless there's a vaccine. Herd immunity is once people have been vaccinated to start that. But, you know, man, the sad part about this, Terry, is whether it's the political part, you know, you look at someone like Nick Saban, who is just like a god in the South. Let's just call it what it is. And I don't mean that.
And the AD.
You know,
Yep.
and the AD.
AD got it too, yep.
Being impacted and what that does. But it just really speaks to how, on one hand, it can be all about fandom and about the sport and playing. But others, about the money, man. It's big business. You know, when you can have the Lansing public schools shut down their sports play, football in particular, for safety purposes, and though there's a fallout, it's not an economic fallout to the degree where people are saying, man, we're missing out on millions of dollars compared to the SEC having no choice, and this is what you have. So this is where we are with it, man. What do you think was going to happen? What do you think the outcome of the game is going to be?
I think you know, I think with Saban being that guy, that presence kind of guy where, you know, shape up when he's around, I think that's going to take a little toll. And I think Alabama's mental toughness is going to be challenged to be on top of their game with the commander-in-chief not being there. I do think that Georgia's defense is really good this year. That front line is tough. I don't think you're going to be able to run the ball like Alabama has been able to do. But I also think that Alabama's air raid and their air attack lately has been, you know, really hard to stop. I mean, they scored 63 last week against, you know, Ole Miss, but they also gave up 38 points. And so I think it's tough. I think it's going to be coming up. I'm gonna go on record and say I do believe that Georgia may get them, but also I think Alabama may get them as well because of quarterback play. I'm not really sold on Georgia's quarterback yet, but I am sold on Mac Jones and Alabama and their quarterback play.
To that point, if Alabama wins in the absence of their head coach, Nick Saban, he is the GOAT. Because the fact that you can beat a team and not even be there, meaning that your culture, you've instilled such a culture that even in your absence, you can win. That'll be, I think, more of a story because the asterisk that'll go by an Alabama loss is people will be like, but he wasn't even there. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it'll almost give more credibility and add to the folklore and the legend of Nick Saban even more to say the only way you can beat him is him not being there. Like that's
they have nothing to lose in some place. Yeah.
So I think that's going to be an interesting storyline. That's at the end of the day is going to work out to their favor. But I wonder, Nick Saban coming back from COVID, you wonder if his voice becomes more amplified in the fight to mask up, get the virus under control. First things first, and you know you will hope that he has a healthy recovery. But you know you wonder how he will leverage this experience as it relates to the overall experience with people there and with college football throughout the country.
I think he will. I think with Saban, I think Saban is a very, I think he's becoming more vocal about this, and I think we're seeing these problems all around. I mean, we're talking about I went over the ACC fan capacities and. We're seeing teams that aren't allowing fans in September, none, not at all. We're seeing some of them 25%, 30%. And even one that I like to point out, 2 schools, Florida State, they're doing 20 to 25%. plus tailgating. We all know how tailgates are. I
Oh,
mean,
man.
are you telling me they really gonna mask up and
Not at
social
all. How you
distance
gonna
at a
mask up
tailgate?
here? You
I
know,
mean,
well, super spreader alert, super spreader alert.
it's
So,
crazy.
so speaking of alerts, Terry, I have to alert us at the winding up of our time for the sake of all things that are happening. I'm happy to say that a little later on tonight, along with talking to Michigan State football, I'll be sitting in on a conversation with Duke women's basketball coach Kara Lawson.
Okay.
I'm able to get a contact to sit in on a call that she's going to be doing about the Kara era, and I've been watching her for a while. I think we even were on an airplane together one time years ago. From the work she's been doing, the fact that she's been one of the few women to be an NBA coach. She was with the Boston Celtics, now coming on, taking on this Duke program. So I look forward to getting that information and sharing more. But I just want to thank you, man, for the work you've been doing, always being a great addition to what we have in this conversation. And it's been so therapeutic for me to be able to have these conversations. I want to thank Coach Orlando Watkins, who's been very steadfast in keeping us up, getting us out there, and he's helping us share an outstanding message. So with a moment or two that we have, Terry, is there anything you want to wrap up with?
Just a quick quote, just to end, just to leave people with, if you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness. I think it's a good time for.
Say it again, Terry. Say it again.
If you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness. And I think it's a good way to end the show. I mean, with all this stuff that's been going on, you got to put yourself first sometimes. You got to make sure you're doing well because you came in with yourself, you're going out with yourself. You all you got. So you got to make sure you're doing well. Make sure you're doing well, I should say, and not being forced to have to take care of yourself when things that are going so well. So I think with all these crazy moments, always make sure you're doing well, be on top of your business, concentrate, and keep pushing forward.
To Terry's point, self-care is very important. So with that, this is Lindsey Huddleston on behalf of Terry McCord Jr. With the SPS Edge Show. Thanking you. Thank you, Coach Orlando Watkins. And shout out to the Streets of Talking podcast. You can hear us at thestreetsoftalking.com Saturday and Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Get at us. We're going to be back here to bring you more to help you stay tough, both on the court, on the field, and in life. Thank you for joining the SPS Edge Show, and I will see you guys next time.